Welcome to the Careers by Jen podcast, episode 220. This time on the podcast, Jen interviews Katy Oliveira on the subject of how to navigate the transition from college to work. Here's my tip. You're probably not going to have as much disposable income as you think.
You're listening to the Careers by Jen podcast with me, Jen Swanson, the podcast that helps you to get the job, love your work, and advance your career. What's it really like to make the transition from being in college or university for a year or 2 years or 4 years or 5 years to the workplace, to actually adulting in the workplace? What's that like? Well, today my guest, Katy Oliveira, is joining us. She is the founder of Collegehood, a college success coaching practice, and she's also the host of the Collegehood Advice podcast, where she shares expert advice, strategies, and insights to help students live their best life even during college. For 15 years, she's supported students during their college experience. She actually still teaches in American history and American social dilemmas, and she's based out of Austin, Texas. And I began by asking Katy the question that of all the challenges people face when moving from college into the workforce, what one seems to be the biggest? We'll get right into that after this.
Are you procrastinating? Do you want to start a job search but aren't quite sure where to begin? Is it all just a little overwhelming? At Careers by Jen, we have a 5-day Jumpstart Your Job Search Challenge to help you get unstuck and move toward finding your dream job. Every day for 5 days, you'll receive an email to your inbox that asks you to complete one task. Every task you complete moves you closer toward your goal. The best part about this challenge is that it's absolutely free. Come over to careersbyjen.com and you'll see the 5-day Jumpstart Your Job Search Challenge on the right-hand side of the screen. Click on the image of Jen, sign up with your email address, and you'll be 5 days closer to reaching your goal. Why wait when you can get busy? Visit careersbyjen.com after this podcast.
So, Katy, I want to start off today asking you this question. Of all the challenges people face when moving from college to work life, what seems to be the biggest one?
I think the biggest is that there is this disconnection, I think, between what they perceive the college experience is doing to prepare them for the world of work and what the college experience is actually doing to prepare them for the world of work. And so what I mean by that is I think based in an old version of what we think college is there for, people think that getting a really great GPA and the right major is the function of college. So if you have the degree, the right major, and the right GPA, then you're going to walk out into the world and you're going to enter into your dream job and you are going to live happily ever after. When the reality is it's less about getting those outcomes and more about what you do during college to build meaningful experiences, connections, skills, knowledge, so that when you go out into the world of work, you have transferable skills and you bring something to the table. And those things are really what matter when you enter the job force. But I think there's a lot of mythology that the other is what gets you there. And so people walk out and they say, what? I got the GPA, I've got the major. Now give me my dream job.
Exactly. I kind of wonder about that because it seems I taught college also for 25 years. And it was fascinating to me that while we were teaching, I was teaching in a not a trade, but basically a job specific area, and training people to get ready to walk out into a particular position. And a lot of it included communication in the healthcare industry. And I was always amazed at, yes, we can teach you the skills, but there are many other things that you need to learn before you actually get out into the workforce. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So there is a really great study actually by Gallup and Purdue. They've put forces together, and they've done several studies on the college experience about sort of the value of college, how people utilize their major. Are they out in the world doing something related to their major? And in one of these studies, they asked recent grads what were the most important things that they needed from their college experience as they went into the workforce. And they were things like mentorships, projects that mattered, work experience that was relevant. Let me think. Getting involved, having actual involvement, not just being involved in a bunch of things, but being involved in a meaningful way. And so it was about the robustness, the quality of what you were doing during the college experience, rather than just sort of ticking off boxes. And so I think what happens is we are sort of funneling people through a system, right? And so during high school, you've got to get the GPA and certain extracurriculars to get into that prestigious college. And then when you get to college, you got to get the right GPA and the right major to get that prestigious job. And so we're just used to like playing this game where we have to collect these coins, so to speak. And there's a disconnection, I think, in the fact that like, no, you're going to live this life. You're going to be and do and contribute in these ways, and it's organic, and it's going to require some really important transferable skills like the ability to apply knowledge, the ability to kind of have a feel for it based on experience and wisdom, the ability to collaborate with others or work in an environment that is maybe a great job, but you have a boss you don't like, right? And so that it's not going to be in a vacuum, right? It's going to be a more complex, organic experience. And so you have to experience things and have relationships within college that start to kind of prepare you for that. And because we're so focused on, I just need to survive my classes, I think sometimes students don't take advantage of those experiences that graduates mention are really the things that are most important. In fact, that poll finds that 75% of graduates don't take advantage of those kinds of things. And those are the very things that are going to give you that more, that wisdom really, once you go out in the world, that's going to allow you to use all that knowledge and skills effectively.
So what do you think that the reason is behind that focus on getting that grade? What is the, what have we lost along the way?
Well, I don't know specifically, but I have a lot of theories. I think there's a disconnection that happened somewhere, and I don't, I'm sure someone out there has studied this, but I know here in the US especially, focusing so much on standardized testing, teaching students how to take a test, how to pass a test, rather than teaching students just rote subject matter, how to write for the sake of writing. You're learning how to write for a standardized exam. You're learning how to write a really specific essay with a really specific structure for a really specific outcome so that we can develop skills. But I think in doing this, we've given them the skills and we've missed the context that the skills are needed for. So I think that's one of the major places that comes from. I think too, we've put so much focus on accumulation of accomplishments. And so but also are disconnecting those accomplishments from who you are and those informing your experience or making a portfolio that you can bring out into the world that can both inform what you want to do, but also inform for other people what you're capable of doing. You are accomplishing those things because you're trying to get somewhere, not because you're just accomplishing those things because they're part of what you're experiencing in your life. So I think those two things paired together, learning skills for the sake of passing tests and accomplishing things for the objective to get to the next thing, have disconnected. And I keep saying that word disconnected because I think that's really what it boils down to, is that it's not that these things aren't important, it's that they're not in their context, right? So there's some studies out there. I think of it like there's some studies out there, and this is going to seem like a weird analogy, but I think it's relevant in that you don't get as much nutrients from a tomato by itself as you do when you eat the tomato with olive oil, right? So like that the olive oil literally helps you extract more of the nutrients from the tomato. I think it's kind of the same thing here. The contents of using these things in real life, that they're not just to get someplace, but they are part of who you are and the things you're going to do in your life, helps you to get more out of them than just ticking off boxes.
And we do seem to have moved to that ticking off boxes. And I was wondering if you noticed a difference in the years that you've been teaching. Have you noticed a difference in how prepared the students are when they come in, when they begin a program?
I have, but I think they have, the funny thing is that they have largely in many ways the academic skills they need. Like I think high schools are doing a better job of teaching them, kind of baseline academic skills, like use a planner, take Cornell notes, use the SQ3R method to read your textbook, right? These are all really popular study strategies and habits. So students come in with these tools, but there is a disconnection between those tools and the quality of expression. And so, yes, the ability to sort of do the thing, I think, is actually increasing. The ability to do the thing well in a unique way with nuance, I think, is decreasing. And so, for example, a student feeling confident about having creative expression in their writing, for example, there's a fear of doing it right. Right. And what right means is that by doing it through a specific formula, not necessarily doing it based in high quality academic thinking. Right. And so it's not the critical thinking that's the measure of high quality. It's the following the steps that's the measure of high quality. So, for example, a student will feel like they did all the things an assignment asked, but they'll get a C on the assignment because the container is not full of great content. They laid out the container, but the content itself is really simplistic and nuanced. And so I think in alignment with what we've been saying, they're really good at following the steps, but they're not necessarily filling those with really sophisticated academic thinking as they might have been like 10 years ago in my classroom.
I noticed some of that as well, and I was just curious about that, if it was the same all around or a little bit different.
Yeah, sorry. And
no,
I teach I've taught at a small liberal arts school, and so I wonder too if different kinds of universities, different more prestigious universities versus universities that serve sort of a more of a middle class B student population, if they're having different experiences depending kind of on the sort of student who is at a different institution. But on the whole, I've noticed a disconnection from academic quality and work that's produced.
Right. Yeah. And I've noticed the same, and have worked in 3 different colleges around that are considered community colleges. 2 of them are now universities. But I think we call it's a similar program across the board. And I noticed the difference in the couple of decades I've been doing it. In the same thing, it's the I followed all the steps, therefore I should be given X,
Mm-hmm.
And but what about this? What about the thought behind it? What about the process? So it's an interesting question. I want to get into some practical steps you have for the person who is transitioning from being in school full-time to being in the workforce. And we'll do that right after we come back from this break.
You've updated your resume, you've sent it out, and you've been selected for an interview. Congratulations. And now you want to get ready, really ready. This is where Careers by Jen can help. We have a comprehensive online course called How to Ace a Job Interview When You Haven't Interviewed in a Long Time. This video-based course is jam-packed with information, advice, and exercises to help you get completely prepared to walk into an interview situation with confidence. From exactly what to prepare in advance, to how to answer common questions, to what questions you might ask the interviewer, and so much more, this course is designed to get you ready. Visit careersbyjen.com and click on Training Resources to see the curriculum, preview a couple of the introductory lessons, and see what others who have taken the course are saying about it. Visit careersbyjen.com and get ready to ace your next interview.
Okay, so I'm wondering, Katy, if you can give us some practical steps on navigating the transition.
I think there are a couple of different things that you can do to navigate the transition that you may know. Some there may seem very obvious and some maybe less so. So I'll start with the first, which I think may seem very simplistic, but is incredibly important, is giving yourself some time to have a transition in your life. So if you can remember back, for a student who's graduating or early in the workforce, if you can remember back to when you were leaving high school and you were entering college, there was a time there, probably a good, anywhere from 3 to even 9 month period where you went through a transition, and that transition had phases. And the first was, you felt like you were in summer camp, and then reality set in, and then you had to start to kind of learn how to function in that new environment. And then you made the transition to sort of how life is now that you're in that environment. And I think that students leave college and then they just, wake up the next day and want to, fast forward into a really successful career, like they're, been in the working world for 20 years right out of the gate. And they don't give themselves the space and time to find work that, and then once they find that work, to give themselves time to, work their way up, put in their dues, that it's going to take a little bit of time for you to get your footing, to find your mentors, to find your friends, to get your rhythm. And so they start to feel anxious, in some cases even depressed, because they wonder why it's taking so long. And then you ask them how long it's been, and they say, 3 to 6 months. And you're like, oh, well, that's not that long. So I would say the first practical step is to give yourself space to transition.
Good. Yeah, it sounds how do you do that though? That's space, as in if you actually have to go right into a job for financial reasons.
Yeah, and I mean mental space.
Okay.
So I mean mental space. So good question. I mean mental space. And what I mean by that is to get out of that narrative in your head where you're judging how long things are taking. Right. And judging, looking at what everybody else is doing around you and comparing yourself to their trajectories. Because the thing is that it takes a little while. I mean, it takes a little while to find a job. It takes a little while to feel comfortable once you get in that job. Sometimes it takes up to a year to feel comfortable. And once you get into a job, it takes a little while to find your friend set, because your friends who you've been hanging out with for 4 years have now scattered to different areas of the country. And maybe you've gone home to where you used to live and life has moved forward while you were away. And so it's going to take a little while for you to get your footing. And so even though you might be entering work and you might be living in your own apartment, giving yourself the time, I guess, psychologically to have your reality of your life transition from that of a college student to that of a young adult professional.
Right. So mental time and real time if you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what would another thing be?
I think a super practical one that I see a lot of students take for granted or not do is to stay connected with their university's career services and alumni services offices. Now, your alumni services office is going to contact you asking for donations to your university once you're an alum. But that's not the only way that you can stay connected to your university. Some career services offices will actually practice interviewing with you, help you craft your resume, have databases that partner with institutions in the area that, those jobs or those opportunities are listed there for alums and current students because they're recruiting through those universities. And so I think that's a really good resource that a lot of alumni don't know they have. They graduate and they sort of disconnect from the institution. Sometimes too, alumni offices have events for alumni that can allow you to network within your alumni at your university, but they may have like an alumni group in your particular city. So even if your school was, say, in Boston and you move to Houston, there might be alums of your university who have a group in Houston. And so that's a really amazing entry point for networking and staying connected to your university. That's really, really great. A friend of mine is an alum actually of Washington University in St. Louis, and they have events for their alumni all the time. They'll bring in speakers, they'll bring in training, they'll bring in professional development for their alumni in cities all across the country. So that's just one example, but I know a lot of universities do that. So that's a professional development opportunity, but also a networking opportunity that I think a lot of people overlook. And so I would make sure as I'm on my way out of the university that I'm connecting with those offices. So again, whatever your university's career development office is, and whatever your university's alumni services office is, to see what kind of programming they do have for you postgraduate. And it's usually not just while you're in your early 20s or in the years after you graduated. If you're non-traditionally aged, it usually follows you for life. So you could even use it 20 years in the future. So I think that's one that many people fail to take advantage of.
That's a really good point. And I've myself been getting, requests for funding from the university I attended. And, I do support the university, but I have not made it out to any of those networking or alumni events. And it's a good point to be able to do that if you're able to, if you're in the space where you can make the time and make the effort. So one more, how about?
Perfect. I have one more in mind. So I think that's exactly what I had. I think the last thing I would say is, yes, you are graduating from college, and yes, you want to enter professional life as soon as possible. I know your parents want you to enter professional life as soon as possible. No one wants to have to live with someone else while they're getting on their feet. However, sometimes there's an experience, I've had this happen with many of my students, where they have a major, they pick a major that they really like studying, but they're still uncertain of how that major actually connects to career opportunities. Maybe they think that major career opportunity connection has to be linear. Maybe they're not exactly sure what transferable skills the major provides for them to enter into work. And anyway, for whatever reason, there's a gap between I majored in this and I was successful and now I don't know what to do for work. So one thing I'd like to recommend is that you can still do some experiential things to figure that out even after graduation. So I've had students as postgrads become interns. I've had students start their professional career while they're searching for a job by doing really meaningful volunteering and service work with organizations they care about that have even sometimes been able to be leveraged into full-time paid employment. I've had students who begin to dabble in whatever the craft is. So for example, if the student is an artist or a writer or a maker of some sort, they start to do some of that now that they have a little more time on their hands. Maybe they submit online to post articles, or maybe they open an Etsy shop, or maybe they start to work as an apprentice with someone in their community. And so there are a lot of ways in that transition from college to the professional world that you sort of can bridge while you're looking for work, instead of, sitting and binge watching Netflix, getting yourself out in the community, because that does a couple things. One, it keeps you active. It keeps your mind active. It keeps your skills honed. It exposes you to people, and people are how you get connected to opportunity. And 3, it keeps you energized and helps you feel like you're contributing and keeps you connected to purpose, which will help you from feeling like a failure and like it's taking too long, some of these other things that we've been talking about. And so I would say if you don't have a clear prospect right out of the gate of college, while you're doing your job search, think through what kinds of things you can be doing that would be valuable to you and also allow you to contribute and interact in the community around you.
And that would look excellent on a resume.
Yes, absolutely. Especially if you're deficit, like you did just have your nose in a book, which, is perfectly admirable, but you didn't get a lot of experience and now you're not sure. Exactly. This is a great opportunity to gather some of that.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you about how you got into doing this, Katy. What you sound so passionate about your topic. So tell us a little bit about how you got to be doing this and about your podcast.
Yeah, so I was one of these people who had no idea what I wanted to do. When I went off to college, I just went to college because that's what students who were at the top of their class did. My parents didn't go to college. My dad actually didn't even graduate from high school. He had a GED. So I kind of got dropped off at college and was like, okay, and now I'm going to follow these steps. And I was pre-med. And I liked science on paper, right? I liked learning about it in a textbook. But once I actually entered into labs where I was doing the work, had to go out and observe surgeries, I soon learned that I didn't really have the stomach for it. And literally, like I passed out in my human anatomy and physiology class like 3 times.
Oh no.
And my TA was finally like, I don't think this is for you. And so sometimes things look really good on paper, right?
Yeah.
But then when you get into it, you're like, ooh, no, I don't have the constitution for this. And so for me, I've just, in my 15 years of working with students, and I'm an advisor and an academic coach and an instructor, I have seen so many students get stalled out because they don't have a clear sense of why they're there. And I've watched students, have mental health issues, poor grades, low motivation, make terrible choices, be completely disengaged because they didn't have a clear sense of why. And I've watched those same students, the moment they figure out why they're there and what it is they want to study or what they might like to do, have a 180 and completely start to thrive and engage and do amazing things. And so for me, I came to figure out that being really connected to like why you're in college, what it is you want to experience and contribute in your life, and then using experiences like college, if that's what you choose to do, to actually gain the qualifications you need to make that dream a reality. That became to me the most important piece of being successful in college. Without it, it didn't matter how much time management we do or how much study tips we do or how many mentors you have or how much tutoring you go to. It's really hard to improve your performance and care and thrive without that clear sense of why. And so you're right. I am super passionate about it because I really think it's what it's all about. It's what we're here to do. And it's why we go to college in the first place because, this is your life. And so you should do something amazing.
Great. And so you decided to start a podcast because...
Well, there's a gap. So at the universities, there's a gap of resources, right? So there's limited resources at universities. So for example, I know in the US, the average caseload between an advisor and their students is 1 to 350. Mm-hmm. And so most of those offices are very well-meaning and they really want to help you, but they're only able to help you in a very limited way. And so many of their resources and energy are going to the students who are the most risk of falling out of college or the students who are most likely to be showcased on their websites, right? And there's a lot of students in the middle who have a major, who are doing okay academically, who are getting sort of baseline support, but aren't getting developed, aren't figuring out how to intentionally and strategically use the experience and get the most value from their investment in college as possible. And so I was trying to think of, this was something that frustrated me when I was a university administrator. I always wished this was a service that my team was able to provide, but we just couldn't. We just didn't have the resources. And so I decided that I would contribute and provide content to students that was accessible, anonymous, could listen to it in their earbuds on a walk to class, but that was longer format than a YouTube video so that we could give a little bit more context and curate voices and experts from all over the country and the world to share their insights and tools and tips so that students could be getting more depth of quality in the advice that they're getting around college beyond do these 5 things to pass your test.
Excellent. And so that's, how long has it been running?
The podcast is on its 66th episode. It has been running now for almost a year, a little over a year and a half.
That's great. That's fantastic. It's a great resource for people. I just listened to episode 57 and Yeah, I know I'm going to share it with a few college people I know.
Thank you. The more, the merrier.
Absolutely. So where can people find you then, Katy?
So the best ways to connect with me, the one place on social media that I show up consistently is Instagram. So you can follow me at Collegehood Advice. And I think the very best way to stay connected to me is to join my email list. I have one for students, and I also have one for parents. So students get weekly updates with resources and content, and parents get monthly updates with resources to help support their student through the college experience. And you can sign up for both of those over at my website, collegehoodadvice.com.
Fabulous. And what's your one last piece of advice for the Careers by Jen listeners?
So I would say my last piece of advice is to go out there and make your possible dream happen. Don't settle for that dream that seems realistic or practical, but is boring and is not inspiring to you. If you take the steps towards that thing that if you think to yourself, wouldn't it be cool if I could? And you start taking your steps toward that, you are so much more likely to get in the wheelhouse of that thing than you are if you start pursuing a practical plan B.
Fantastic advice. Thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your wisdom. And I look forward to hearing what you're doing in the future.
Thank you so much for having me, Jen. It's been really fun.
You've been listening to Careers by Jen with Jen Swanson. If you like what you heard, please share this. You know, if every single person listening today shared this episode with just one friend, our audience would be twice as big just like that. And the more people we can help with our content, the better. So help out a friend and help grow our audience by sharing this show with someone you know who would benefit from the content. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, and together we can make a difference. Until next time, take good care.